Welcome back guys to another Odyssey video and to the absolute new mother of all glitches. We have broken the game way beyond what we ever thought is possible. And no, I'm not speaking about the little tiny blue bow. This bow was a really nice glitch for a very long part that we played the game. But now it's time to dethrone this glitch and replace it with something that is infinitely better. Maybe some of you remember that I made an April Fool's video last year with a build that dealt absolutely zero damage, fooling you by telling you that when you reach zero damage you will actually deal 2 billion. It turned out that this is actually possible. The game's real maximum damage is in fact 2 to the power of 31, which is in fact 2.147 billion, if you calculate this correctly. And the closest I got to this damage so far was 2.144 billion damage, which is also the new world record damage. However, it is not possible to reach this amount of damage when your damage turns 0. You have to make your damage turn negative. So to understand what is actually happening here, you have to understand that your base damage, which you start when playing the game with, is 100% hunter damage, 100% warrior damage and 100% assassin damage. But there's an item, the second sight bow, which actually gives you an engraving that gives you 200% additional headshot damage, but minus 100% warrior and 100% assassin damage. So this was actually used in my April Fool's video, bringing my warrior damage and my assassin damage to 0. But that is not enough to trigger this glitch. You have to find a way to bring your damage below 0. And if your damage goes below 0, the game will think that you actually deal 2 billion damage, so your base damage will suddenly turn into positive 2 billion damage. Now to bring your damage further below 0 for warrior and assassin, we not only have to use the second sight engraving, but we also have to add either the warrior or assassin damage conversion. Because when you use the assassin damage conversion, you will convert 50% of minus 100 to be added to warrior. So you will get another minus 50% on your warrior damage. And if you use it the other way around, if you use the warrior damage conversion, you will add another minus 50% from warrior to your assassin damage, so that your assassin damage can go negative. So there's only 2 ways to actually use this glitch. Either your warrior damage can go negative if you use the assassin damage conversion, or your assassin damage can go negative when you use the warrior damage conversion. So it is important that your warrior damage or your assassin damage stays below minus 100%. So you can add no more warrior or assassin damage to your build, because even when you add the other one, thanks to the conversion, it would still increase the one you want to be below 0. The maximum amount of warrior damage or assassin damage you could add in both cases would be 49%, so that your damage still stays at minus 101%. If your warrior or your assassin damage is still negative in your inventory screen, you can still do the glitch. However, as soon as it turns positive, the glitch is no longer active. So you should absolutely avoid to add any warrior damage or any assassin damage to your build. Don't use the warrior damage mastery, don't use the assassin damage mastery, and also don't use weapons master and don't use shadow assassin, because all of this will give you a ton of warrior damage or assassin damage. However, as long as you only add less than 50% warrior damage to your build, you will still be able to do the glitch. So let's say if you want to still get the 10% crit chance from weapons master, this would actually be possible, since you only get 40% warrior damage from weapons master and 10% crit chance from it. But if you add more than that, your damage will no longer be negative. You can also not use assassin damage instead of warrior damage, because half of your assassin damage would also be converted into warrior damage, which would push you above minus 100%. And if you want to push your assassin damage below minus 100%, you can also not add warrior damage, because the warrior damage conversion will also add more assassin damage to it. So the only possible solution to still use other items for your build is to use items with hunter damage, because you can literally have infinite amount of hunter damage. Hunter damage is not affecting this glitch at all. It is only working with either warrior or assassin damage. But there is still a way to also use this trick for your hunter damage, and that of course involves using the Bighorn Bow. Because the Bighorn Bow will use your warrior damage, and if you manage to bring your warrior damage below minus 100%, then the Bighorn Bow will also be able to deal over 2 billion damage with your arrows. And that will work with any type of arrows, even with normal arrows, devastating shot or predator shot. You can deal up to 2 billion damage with whatever attack you like by using this glitch. However, this glitch also has some severe negative aspects, not only because of the negative damage, because you can only deal either 2 billion hunter or warrior damage or 2 billion assassin damage, but you cannot deal 2 billion with all types in a single build. But the biggest downside of this glitch is that your damage will not only be able to deal positive 2 billion damage, but it can also suddenly go into negative 2 billion. Because your damage will not stop at positive 2 billion, there is no hard cap. If you deal more than 2 to the power of 31 damage, your damage will drop from 2 billion to negative 2 billion and will cycle through the whole number range from minus 2 billion to positive 2 billion multiple times until it reaches its final resting point. Depending on how much critical damage, how much weapon damage, and how strong the ability was you used, it will cycle through it 2 times, 3 times, 5 times, and you can't really anticipate whether your damage will end up in the negative range or in the positive range. You will only deal damage if it ends up to be in the positive range, but you will deal no damage at all if you end up in the negative range. And it is actually very complicated to make a setup where all your attacks will always end up in the positive range, because you have so many different attacks. Your light attack and heavy attack, and even the charged heavy attack, ring of chaos, overpower attacks, devastating shot, all deal very different amounts of damage, and they have different amounts of multipliers. If you make a bad setup for this glitch, you could end up that all your light attacks, no matter how hard you try, will never deal any damage. And that is a big negative aspect of using this glitch. You cannot really control how much damage you deal. It will just end up somewhere between minus 2 billion and positive 2 billion. And depending on the attack type and the ability you use, you might end up dealing no damage and get into real trouble when making this build. However, that also means that you really don't have to focus on any crit chance or critical damage, and you also don't really have to focus on your weapon damage. You could simply add up as much resistance and armor as you want, because you deal 2 billion damage anyway already. So this glitch is absolutely crazy and definitely breaks the game. I just don't really like the fact that you may not be able to deal this damage every time. But of course, I'm already working on a build for that, which will counter all these negative aspects. Until then, stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe, leave me a like, and see you next time.